All right, we are in section 1.5 where we are adding integers. From what we talked about in previous sections in chapter 1, integers are whole numbers that are either positive or negative. Integers cannot be fractions or decimals, so if you look at the line chart that we have here, the negative 10 through 10, those are examples of integers. So we're going to be adding integers in this section. So a lot of it would be like if we were to say use a number line like we have represented here, where we got negative 3 plus 7. We kind of did this maybe a little bit when elementary school. You started off with the first integer, which happens to be negative 3 here. And then you're going to add 7. So if it's a positive number, you're going to go to the right. If it's a negative number, you're going to go to the left. So since 7 is positive, we're going to go 7 units to the right. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And it ends up in 4. So negative 3 plus 7 equals a positive 4. I do realize that you can't use that number line for, really big numbers. So there are some rules that we have to follow in order to add integers. One is when you are adding two numbers that are positive, when you add them together, your answer will always be positive. When you're adding two numbers that are negative, you add their absolute values, and your answer is always negative. The last one is when adding a positive number with a negative number, subtract the lesser absolute value from the greater absolute value, and then your answer will take the sign of the bigger absolute value. So here's what that means. So like say if I had negative 7 plus 18, for example, I know that I have a negative number in 7, I have a positive number in 18, so I'm going to subtract their absolute values. So I'm going to go 18 minus 7, and that's going to give me 11. So my answer for this is going to be 11, and then I take the sign of the bigger absolute value. Well, 18 is bigger than 7, so 18 was a positive number, so it just leaves it as 11. So if it was a negative result, it would say like I had negative 5 plus 2. So I take the absolute value and subtract them together, I get 3. So I put 3 here, but the larger value was attached with the negative, so then it would be a negative 3 as a result. Looking at some examples, I have negative 20 plus a negative 15. So I go back to my rules and say, all right, negative 20 plus negative 15, both of them are negative numbers. I'm going to add them together, which gives me 35, and both of them are negative, so it's going to have a negative on the outside. If I have 18 plus 0 plus negative 54, well, let's take the first one, 18 plus 0, which is going to give me 18, plus a negative 54. I have to subtract the absolute values because one's positive, one's negative. So that gives me a result of 36. And this absolute value, or this number is the larger of the absolute values, and so it becomes a negative 36. I got 300 plus 111 plus negative 44 plus negative 256. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just add these two together. So now I'm left with 411 plus negative 44 plus negative 256. I'm going to take the 411 and add the negative 44, which if I subtract those absolute values, I'm going to get 367. And then 411 is larger, so that's positive, so it's going to be left as positive, so it's going to be a plus negative 256. And if I subtract the absolute value of these two integers, I get 111, and 367 is larger than 256, so the sign in this result will be positive. Last one, negative 230 plus negative 512. So if I add those together, I'm going to get negative 742. Now I'm going to add plus 178 plus 94. So if I go plus 178, I get a negative 564 plus 94. And the result will be a negative 470. So not only are we going to talk about different um, adding of integers, but we're also going to dive into some properties of addition, one of which is the identity property of addition. And the definition of the identity property is the sum of a number and 0 will always be that number. So for example, 5 plus 0 will always equal 5. So in a more general sense, if we were to attach a variable to that, we could say a plus 0 will always equal a. All right? And then if we look at the inverse, we have the inverse property of addition, which means it's the sum of a number and its opposite will always be 0. So if I have 5 plus negative 5, it's going to equal 0. So in a more general sense, we can say a plus negative a will always equal 0. All right, and that is adding integers. So I hope this helps. Until next time.